Benjamin Siegel, better known as Bugsy, was a man with looks that could kill and a career to match. As we celebrate our centennial, we'll take a look back at the man that is synonymous with Sin City. But to one Valley woman, he was simply Dad. We'll hear from his daughter, Millicent Rosen. She has never granted an interview in the U.S. until now. In this exclusive interview, she talks candidly about the man credited with putting Las Vegas on the map.
Well, I only know my side, and I don't know the other side that people have. I mean, he did have a temper, but it wasn't a crazy temper that I ever saw. I mean, if he got mad about something, he could scream a little. I think I have no clue of what his other life was. It was never brought into us in any manner. Only the better parts of his life.
His life that began on February 28, 1906. His parents, Russian Jewish immigrants, settled in Brooklyn, New York. Dad was a cabinet maker while Mom stayed home. Millicent still wonders how he became so savvy from his humble beginnings.
Well, he was a genius with numbers. He'd be able to do anything, without a piece of paper and numbers. And he was good around the gaming tables, particularly. And also, I don't know where he got all this knowledge from. I mean, as I say, he grew up on the Lower East Side and he came from Jewish parents. The little I remember of his father, he spoke English, but my grandmother didn't. And even in later years, when she was living in California, I couldn't understand a word she said. She was the wife, the mother, and she stayed home, and the father went out and supported the family, and so on and so forth. So I don't know where all this knowledge came from, truthfully.
Ben did know he wanted to escape the poverty of his childhood. He struck up a friendship with future mob boss Meyer Lansky. The teens would become known as the Bugs and Meyer mob, working in extortion, gambling, protection, and the very lucrative bootlegging business. But that would be child's play compared to what would come next.
The guys who were the brains and brawn of Murder Incorporated, Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, tended to have come from the tough part of New York, the Lower East Side. They had to be tough to survive. They had to work hard to survive. Sometimes they had to work the other side of the law. And the division between them, Lansky was more the Secretary of the Treasury. He was the money guy. Now, Costello was referred to as the Prime Minister. So maybe Lansky was really the Chancellor of the Exchequer, if we want to use the British term. Luciano more in the Costello area. We don't know for sure. We do know that Lansky and Siegel were very close, and that as kids, apparently Siegel even protected Lansky, who was smaller and not so tough physically, and that there was a bond between them. So their efforts involve illegal activities, obviously, but they are also part of the American experience in all its greatness and all its horror. And that makes them appealing too.
Eventually, their alliance would fold into the national syndicate, and their interests would turn to running the Trans-American Wire Service, which allowed bookies to take illegal phone bets. It was big money, and Siegel knew how to spend it. Siegel rented a swanky mansion at 326 McCarty Drive in Beverly Hills for his wife Esta and his daughters. Shown here was Siegel's parents. Later, he would build his own dream house at 250 Delfern Drive in Homely Hills, California, where his mansion sat among the biggest Hollywood stars of the day.
They would have parties at the house, and you'll see pool parties there and that type of thing, and a lot of entertaining and going, socially out.
In this very rare home video, we see a very different side of Benjamin Siegel.
it shouldn't be that big a surprise that Bugsy Siegel had a home life, and that the man his family knew was not the same man that his business friends and enemies knew.
A family man splashing in the pool with his kids while entertaining friends and family. Friends who happen to be world famous. Friends like Cary Grant.
They dropped in. I really have no clue why Cary Grant was there. I mean, I walked into, I guess you'd call it a family room now, and he called us in, and there he was. He did have a lot of friends from show business, and they'd be at the house all the time or at the dinner party. We just sort of took it naturally. We never had dinner with it when they had those big parties or anything. We weren't invited, so to speak, but we did see them when they came in, and it was fun.
With his movie star looks, Siegel fit right in with the crowd.
Well, he was very physically good looking. He had the most gorgeous blue eyes.
Do you have his eyes?
Yeah.
Something else she would have, a starlet godmother. How did Jean Harlow become your godmother?
Well, she was friends of my father's and mother's, and she used to come to the house, and she had no kids, and she took a liking to me, and she became my godmother.
In 1941, the country was reeling from World War II, and Benjamin Siegel, at 35, was too old to get drafted and wasn't looking to enlist. He was looking for his next big moneymaker. He found it in Las Vegas, where gambling and prostitution were legal. He invested in the El Cortez, and at 9 years old, Millicent would get her very first taste of Las Vegas.
We came out here to sort of look the place over, and it was really fun. My sister and my mother and my father and myself, we spent 3-4 weeks here while he was getting accustomed to the place and looking around. And we just stayed in the pool, went horseback riding, and of course we weren't allowed in the casino. So we stood there and peered in.
For Millicent, the trip out west was just a perk of her father's work, whatever that was.
I didn't know all about Murder Incorporated or any of those things. No clue whatsoever. I mean, when we went to school and they asked what your father did, retired. Retired from what? Because that was one thing when you go to school, they ask you questions. So, and then when the hotel was, and he was out here, then I could say in the hotel business. But we knew nothing, and there were lots of people that we knew that were supposed to be part and parcel of that whole thing, but I knew them only in a different way than what's been pictured. And I can't comment on it because I don't know.
She did know that her dad was doting.
He spent time with me at the stables, and I was doing the horse show circuit here, and when he was in town, he was always there. We'd go out to dinner. He had a terrible temper. If he got mad, you could hear him, God knows where. But basically, he was very soft-spoken. I know we could talk to him if we had a problem. We'd go to him a little faster than we'd go to my mother, and he was just very loving. And, very proud of my riding and all the ribbons and things that I won, and very supportive.
Those moments were fleeting, as Siegel split his time between the family home in California and his interests in Vegas, but the distance would soon grow even more.
When I graduated grade school, my parents decided to separate, so we moved back to New York, and I was like 14 then, so I would be coming back and forth in the summer. When we moved back to New York, I was kind of rebellious, and I felt that, we were uprooted from a home, in a state that we grew up in, so to speak, and New York was nothing that I liked. And I would wear blue jeans and big sloppy sweaters and all that kind of stuff, and I started to smoke in the street, and The schools were, we went to private schools and they had no facilities for food. So when you're in high school, you were allowed to go out to eat. I never came back. My sister was 2.5 years younger than me, and she begged not to go to the same school as me. So my mother just got fed up with me and complained to my father, and he wrote a letter.
Dear Esta, I've taken a little time to think over your letter before answering you. Esta, I well realize the problems you have with the girls, and you know that I always have, and I always will do all that I can to help you with them. Our love for them and our responsibility to them is something we will always share.
He sort of told my mother what it is to be growing up, uprooted from your friends and the place that you grew up in, and being in a totally different environment. And he wrote her this letter, and he had really good insight into what somebody'd be feeling at this point. He hated to see women smoke, and he never liked my mother smoking, and I could have a cigarette with her at dinner. Not in the street, you know, that kind of thing. But I guess at the time, you know, smoking wasn't considered what it is today. I don't think he mentioned anything about health. I think he just didn't like the way it looked. And I was a little young too. He was very articulate. He was really a softie in lots of respects. I have no clue how he was in business. I just have a clue on how he was with friends and family. He was always there for anybody. I mean, I know he made his brother come to California. He was a doctor and made sure that he started a practice and took care of his family. He was very family oriented. Like I say, the other side of him, I have no clue as far as business is concerned. Just that some of the people that he was in business with were friends, lifelong friends. They all grew up together and stayed friends till the end.
Now, a good example of Siegel's loyalty and taste is that he loved Grace Hayes, whose son Peter Lind Hayes and daughter-in-law Mary Healy became an important part of the community here and were very popular performers in the early days of television in the 50s and 60s. They were in the movies. And Grace Hayes ran a lodge. And Siegel loved eating at the Grace Hayes Lodge. He didn't want to put a restaurant in the Flamingo originally because he'd rather go to Grace Hayes. I think even Grace Hayes had to say, no, Benny, you have to put in a restaurant in your casino. So maybe not the best businessman, but a lot of people will tell you if he had the good taste to like the Grace Hayes Lodge, it must have been okay.
To local historians, the building of the iconic Flamingo Hotel is one of the most important stories in Las Vegas history.
A man named Billy Wilkerson came up with the idea for the Flamingo. He was the owner of the Hollywood Reporter newspaper in California. He owned nightclubs in California where illegal gambling was being done. He saw the opportunity to open a more exotic kind of Monte Carlo style hotel on the Strip. He had been to the El Rancho Vegas, he'd been to the Last Frontier, he'd been downtown, and these places were sort of cowboy joints, you know. They were not real fancy. They didn't have that Hollywood vibe that he was going for. So he started building the Flamingo on the Las Vegas Strip. I think he paid something like $80,000 for the property, way out at what is now Flamingo Road and Las Vegas Boulevard, way outside of town. And people thought, you know, that's way too far. But what he saw was it was on the Los Angeles Highway, and it was the first stop you were going to make on the way into town. So it separated itself physically from the rest of Las Vegas in what he thought was a positive way. He started building the Flamingo and ran into some financial problems.
Wilkerson turned to syndicate boss Meyer Lansky to invest. In turn, Lansky assigned Siegel to oversee the construction. Siegel would eventually take the hotel over.
And so Wilkerson ultimately wasn't even present in the latter part of construction. And so Bugsy basically took it over and claimed it as his own. After, more or less after Wilkerson was out of the picture, Siegel wanted to make the Flamingo even more opulent than Wilkerson had intended. I mean, Wilkerson spent a lot of money in that project, but Siegel spent a lot more. He imported, you know, marble from Italy, and he had all of these additional reinforcements to the buildings, and he wanted all the luxuries that you could imagine.
Siegel ended up spending $6 million on the casino, and it wasn't even completed. But eager to show Lansky and the rest of the boys back east home some results, he opened the Flamingo prematurely on December 26, 1946. It was a blasé opening, and more than just the boss's money got burned.
Oh, when the Flamingo opened, there was a little moat in front of the Flamingo. And I guess people that were here then, he put these pretty pink flamingos outside, and he thought it would be nice as you walk into the hotel to see them. And for the first couple of days, they were kind of all right. And then I guess they can't stand the heat. So they came out one day, and there they were all dead. So they never got any more flamingos. But that was when the hotel first opened.
Siegel may not have known how much heat birds can take, but he did know hot real estate when he saw it.
Well, when the hotel was built, eventually the man that I married was here, and my sister and myself. My father took us out the back of the hotel where the rooms were and pointed to the desert, and he said, "There's 800 acres that belong to you kids." And we looked at the tumbleweed. And later, after my father died, I was married to Jack, and his father was now part of the hotel. He looked at the land. He said, "I can't conceive what your father would want with 800 acres behind the hotel." He says, "There's tumbleweed, I'm selling it." So I think all three of us got $8,000 apiece for the 800 because it was part of what we got from his estate. And Jack was also partners in this land deal, so he got $8,000. And I hate to think of what it's worth today because I could kill myself. I mean, he expected it to be built up, and he also said that there'd be sidewalks to downtown from the hotel. Eventually people, if they wanted to walk, could walk downtown, which was a little far-fetched at that point. But no, he saw growth here. He saw tremendous growth here.
There was a guy I knew who came to the opening of the Flamingo with his wife, invited personally by their friend Ben Siegel. Siegel took him aside that night and said to his friend, "Buy land. There'll be 1 million people here." Well, wait a minute. That's 1946, early 1947. The population of Las Vegas had just about gotten to 20,000. Well, maybe he did know something, a little more than we thought he did.
While Siegel was wheeling and dealing, Millicent and her sisters had the run of the hotel.
I remember that we were at the pool a lot, and then we went to the shows at night. I somehow or other, that my father wasn't aware of the fact that I got into the counting room at night. He did find me there. But basically my sister was younger, so she just went to bed. It was just a fun place to be.
But it wasn't just Millicent and her sister that got to play. Dad took part in some games too.
There's a story told about Siegel liking to play cards. I believe it was gin rummy. And he's playing cards one night with some guys, including Herb McDonald, who goes on to be one of the great innovators, PR men, hotel executives, business executives in the history of Las Vegas. And at the end of the game, Siegel says, "Well, we're going to have to do this again." And McDonald said, "Well, I'll take you on anytime you're ready." And afterwards someone said, "Do you know who you said that to?" And McDonald said, "No." "Bugsy Siegel." And McDonald said, "My knees went weak." Well, he had a reputation. And frankly, you don't get the nickname Bugsy without having something of a reputation.
That reputation was put to the test with Las Vegas Sun owner Hank Greenspun.
Siegel hired a PR man who had put out a magazine that had done a nice feature on him. And the PR man was Hank Greenspun. And the story was told, and Hank Greenspun told it with great relish, of the time he and Siegel had an argument over something or other at the Flamingo that ended with Greenspun shoving Siegel. And he lived to tell about it. So maybe he wasn't always Bugsy.
But Siegel knew he had bigger threats than a shove from a local journalist. His was a dangerous world, and his suite at the Flamingo was reportedly rigged with bulletproof windows and escape hatches, something his daughter doesn't remember or perhaps never was allowed to see.
There was a staircase going down, but that would be about it. But it was just a suite.
I've been told, not having been in there, that there were escape hatches, escape routes for Siegel, because he knew from his line of work that there was always some element of danger. That isn't to say that a child's memories are wrong. We all remember things a certain way. At the same time, as a loving parent, which he certainly seems to have been, does he want his child to know that her daddy is in this kind of danger? I wouldn't think so. And so it would be understandable if it was there and she didn't remember it.
The last night the Bugsy Siegel suite was open to the public, we rented it for a big party. The Flamingo had big expansion plans, and they were going to demolish the original buildings there where Bugsy Siegel's suite was on the top floor, and we just thought that that was a opportunity to sort of tie the new Las Vegas to the old Las Vegas. It looked just the way it must have looked in the 40s. Pool table, I mean, it looked like sort of a bachelor pad kind of Playboy place. You know, very thick walls, very thick ceilings, bulletproof glass. Looked a little bit like a combination of a Playboy pad and a bunker. There was a secret ladder that in one of the closets that went down, I guess 6 floors down into a sub-basement. And there was a passageway that went out into what used to be a vacant field where there was apparently some kind of a shed out there that he kept the car in.
Benjamin Siegel's suite was built for safety. In his world, it had to be. But eventually, his world caught up to him.
I think his fellows in the organized crime syndicate were decided it was time for Bugsy to go. There's some dispute about exactly who killed him and why he was killed. Others have claimed that it was not related to the Flamingo and that Meyer Lansky protected him from being killed because they were boyhood friends. Others have said no, Lansky did protect him for a while, but after a while he just couldn't do it anymore, and Bugsy ended up being killed in Beverly Hills in June 1947.
We were on a train coming out to California to spend the summer with him. And it was just my sister and myself, and my mother was in New York. And when we got off the train, my mother was standing there with Smiley. And that's how I found out. They took us, both of us, to his brother's house, who was the doctor, and told us when we got to the house.
It was only after Siegel's death that Millicent learned what her father's true occupation was. And in her eyes, it didn't matter. He was still Dad. The memories of her father she holds dear. And as far as Hollywood's version, she says, just pure fiction.
I mean, it made a good story. I think they just glossed over everything. Was it Lawrence Melchior or something? We were supposed to be living in his house or something. I remember part of that wasn't true. Just the whole thing was like what would sound better. Like, I have no clue why they would get a birthday party of mine in there. Had nothing really to do with his life. I did meet Virginia, and she wasn't all that consuming. I mean, she was like one of the guys. I don't know. It just, as I say, Bugsy sort of covered nothing and embellished it.
Did it, after you watched it, how did you feel?
You know, you made a movie. When they wanted to make it, they came to me and wanted to know if I wanted to help them, and at that point I wasn't the least bit interested. It meant nothing to me. I couldn't have done anything that would have changed it, so why bother? And as I say, you know, We were kind of private about our lives, and that's about it.
There was one thing the movie did get right. Benjamin Siegel did make his mark on the bright lights of the Las Vegas Strip. And today, Siegel's family is lighting up the town in a different way, with Odyssey Lighting, the family business. And in her downtime, Millicent reflects on the larger-than-life character the Hollywood legends were made of. But to her, was just Dad.
I think his legacy is starting this town, envisioning this town. I mean, there were other people that were here first with other hotels and stuff, all small, but he envisioned it as a big gambling mecca. I'm proud of my father. I'm proud of what he did and what he was trying to envision and fulfill his vision. That makes me proud. Just the kind of man that I knew him to be.
It's not just the memories of a daughter that keep his legacy alive. A memorial to Siegel stands outside his crowning achievement, the Flamingo Hotel, a tribute to the man who helped bring a dusty desert town to life. I'm Lisa Katz. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to tune in next time as we take a leap back and look forward at 100 years of Clark County history.